You probably think the next massive leap in laptop computing is going to cost you at least $2,000, require a cooling fan the size of a jet engine, and come wrapped in a heavy titanium shell. But you would be dead wrong. What if I told you that Apple's most disruptive computer in a decade won't be a high-end Pro model, but a $599 entry-level machine that might just make you completely regret ever spending big money on a flagship laptop? I know what some of you are thinking: how on earth can a budget machine outsmart a Pro? But there is a hidden strategy buried deep in the Asian supply chains right now, and it involves ripping the engine straight out of an upcoming iPhone and shoving it directly into a MacBook. And the craziest part, there is one massive catch to this strategy that absolutely no one saw coming. We will get to that exact catch in just a minute. Let's just rewind for a quick second. If you have been around the tech block a few times, you definitely remember the early internet days. You remember when just booting up a computer took long enough for you to go brew an entire pot of coffee. And you certainly remember those old Intel MacBooks from a few years ago that sounded like a Boeing 747 taking off the second you opened too many browser tabs. We accepted that because we thought raw power naturally required massive heat. We thought performance required a heavy power brick. Apple changed the game with their M-series chips, giving us power without burning our laps. But here is the thing: they are about to flip the script entirely. According to Taiwan-based tech columnist and former Bloomberg reporter Tim Culpin, Apple is preparing a brand new machine called the MacBook Neo2. And it is bringing two completely insane upgrades that defy every single rule of budget tech. The first major bombshell is what is actually powering this thing. Tim Culpin reports in his Culpium newsletter, based on highly reliable supply chain sources in Asia, that the MacBook Neo2 is going to ditch the traditional M-series laptop chips entirely. Instead, it is going to use a tweaked version of the exact same A19 Pro chip that is currently destined for the upcoming iPhone 17 Pro models. Now, I can hear you already. You are sitting there thinking, wait a minute, they are putting a smartphone processor inside a laptop. Isn't that a massive step backward? But here is where it gets incredibly crazy. You have to look at the psychology of how Apple actually designs their silicon. The series chips are not built for just raw brute force peak performance that burns out in throttles after 5 minutes of heavy lifting. They are engineered from the ground up for extreme relentless efficiency. Think about how you use your phone right now. You demand instant response, zero lag, constant background syncing, and battery life that lasts all day long. And you expect it to do all of that without a cooling fan. When you take that exact architectural philosophy and scale it up into a laptop chassis with a massive battery, something truly magical happens. Instead of giving you a short burst of speed followed by massive thermal throttling and that dreaded spinning beach ball of death, the Neo2 is expected to deliver rock-solid, consistent performance for hours on end. We are talking about significantly less heat, better sustained speed, and a remarkably smoother overall experience. It is like taking the highly tuned engine of a modern sports car and putting it into your daily driver. It will just go and go without ever breaking a sweat. And honestly, this changes absolutely everything about how we buy computers. If this A19 Pro chip is already powerful enough to handle heavy real-world tasks without throttling, it is not going to be long before it starts completely replacing the need for higher-end MacBooks for the vast majority of normal users. Why buy a massive pickup truck just to drive in stop-and-go traffic when the budget model handles the speed limit effortlessly? But do not click away just yet, because the second confirmed upgrade is arguably even more important, and it finally fixes the single biggest complaint we have had with Apple for years. We are talking about memory. For what feels like an absolute eternity, Apple has been pulling the wool over our eyes, trying to convince us that 8 GB of RAM is perfectly fine for a modern computer. They treated it like it was some kind of magic number. But anyone who has actually tried to do serious multitasking knows the cold, hard truth. Running 8 GB today is the equivalent of trying to push a watermelon through a garden hose. Well, according to Tim Culpin's report, the dark ages of 8 GB are finally over. The MacBook Neo2 will feature 12 GB of unified memory as the absolute standard. Let's be completely honest with each other for a second about how buying an Apple computer usually works. We all know Apple's pricing ladder is perfectly designed to trap you. You see a great starting price on a billboard, but then you get to the store and realize 8 GB of RAM is not going to cut it in the modern era, so you upgrade the RAM. Then you figure, hey, I might as well upgrade the storage while I am at it. Before you know it, you walked into the store to buy a budget laptop and you are walking out with a $2,000 receipt and a knot in your stomach. But the Neo2 cuts that entire psychological ladder off right at the knees. By giving you 12 GB right out of the gate, they are giving you the keys to the castle for the base price. It is the biggest consumer win we have seen in years. And the reason for this massive jump comes directly from the A19 Pro's configuration in the iPhone 17 Pro, which is already engineered to utilize 12 GB of RAM. That means the MacBook Neo2 will jump straight from 8 to 12, and that is a dramatically bigger deal than it sounds on paper. Now let's talk about why they are actually doing this. Apple is not just handing out free memory because they suddenly feel generous. No, they are gearing up for something much bigger. This move completely proves that Apple is getting every single upcoming device ready for heavy on-device AI features. Apple Intelligence is incredibly memory hungry. If they want this new artificial intelligence to run locally on your machine, without sending all your personal data to a remote cloud server, they need that 12 gigabytes just to keep the lights on. If Apple tried to run their new AI on an 8 gigabyte machine, it would crash harder than my first dial-up connection when someone picked up the phone in the other room. And remember, Apple's unified memory is not like the old sticks of RAM we used to painstakingly snap into our motherboards back in the day. It is integrated directly into the silicon chip itself. That makes it lightning fast and incredibly efficient. It means faster app switching, completely fluid multitasking, and significantly better performance when you are juggling a dozen different heavy applications. NASA called, they want their engineering back. But here is the twist, most casual users will not even notice the technical shift instantly. They are not going to sit there and look at Geekbench benchmark scores. They will just feel like their computer works effortlessly all the time without ever slowing down. But the scene is completely different for the power users. For the guys who actually push their machines to the absolute limit, the difference will be like night and day. Now I want you to combine these two massive upgrades in your mind for a second. An incredibly efficient A19 Pro chip paired with a baseline of 12 gigabytes of unified memory. On paper, to the untrained eye, it just looks like a standard, boring specification bump. But in reality, it is all about sustained performance. The kind of reliable performance where your MacBook feels just as snappy and responsive after 5 straight hours of heavy use as it did the very first minute you opened the lid. This is exactly like that very first iPhone moment all over again. It fundamentally shifts our entire set of expectations. Think about it from a manufacturing standpoint. By the time this laptop launches, Apple will have already produced millions of these A19 Pro chips for the iPhone 17 Pro. They will have ironed out all the bugs, maximized the production yields, and driven the manufacturing costs straight into the floor. That is exactly how they can afford to price this laptop at $599. It is brilliant supply chain economics. They are subsidizing your new laptop with the chips they already perfected for their flagship phones. And that leads us to a much bigger, slightly uncomfortable question for Apple. If they keep pushing these incredibly powerful iPhone-level chips into their cheapest MacBooks, and they start pairing them with actually usable amounts of memory as standard, where does that leave the rest of their very expensive, high-end lineup? If the MacBook Neo2 can handle your daily workflow without slowing down, without turning your lap into a frying pan, and with battery life that lasts for days on end, it is going to quietly become the default choice for absolutely everyone. And that is the real, undeniable shift that Tim Culpin's report is hinting at. Apple is not just making the MacBook Neo2 a faster budget laptop, they are making it a machine that is financially impossible to ignore. You would have to be absolutely crazy to spend $2,000 when just $600 gets you this level of sustained, reliable performance. Now remember that massive catch I mentioned right at the beginning of this video. The one supply chain secret that could ruin this entire party. Here it is. According to the latest reports, Apple is currently targeting to officially launch the MacBook Neo2 in the last quarter of 2026. But because they are packing this much unprecedented power into a machine that is expected to stick to a starting price of just $599, the supply chain is bracing for historic levels of demand. I'm talking about wait times that could stretch for months. When you offer pro-level efficiency and standard 12 gigabytes of memory for under $600, you do not just get high sales, you get a complete, absolute sellout. It is very unlikely Apple will increase that price right out of the gate for the first generation, which means getting your hands on one of these is going to be exactly like trying to buy sold-out concert tickets. If you do not move incredibly fast, you're going to be left completely empty-handed and waiting until 2027. So I want to hear directly from you. Does the massive jump to an A19 Pro chip and 12 gigabytes of unified memory make the $599 MacBook Neo 2 your next guaranteed upgrade, or are you still holding out for the traditional, expensive Pro models? Drop your specific thoughts down in the comments right now.